Hello, and welcome to the Convo presented by Leadership Indianapolis. I am Ebony Chappelle, Manager of Programs and Communications, and today I'm talking with Brandon Cosby of Flanner House. Hi, Brandon. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Happy to be talking with you. Um, I know that Flinter House does so much in the community. It's been around for over a century, providing resources and services specifically to Black people here in Indianapolis. Right now, we're living in a crazy time with COVID and civil unrest and everything else. Tell us a little bit about the work that Flinter House has been doing to serve the community during this time.
Yeah, I mean, it is, they're strange times. And for us, being around for actually 122 years,
Wow.
our job is to be there in the crisis. And that was one of the things that we had to go back and as a staff understand that, like, while other folks are shutting down, like, that's not in the cards for us. That's not an option for us. We are the port in the storm. So, um, and the beautiful thing about having a team of people who all signed on to do the work for the same reasons, the pivot wasn't that hard. I mean, it was scary, but it wasn't hard. Having all of the different programming and all of the different work we do. Operating the cafe and the bodega on top of our regular programming. The first thing that we did is that we shut the bodega down and liquidated everything in it.
Wow.
Turned all of those products on the shelf into emergency food boxes for people who had been blindsided with the layoffs during the shutdown. And then started working with gleaners and with second helpings to begin distributing meals and food boxes to people in the neighborhood and in the community. And so my staff, we closed the Child Development Center, our Center for Working Families programming all went online. We shut down our Senior Citizens program just because they're part of that targeted vulnerable population. But all of our staff just immediately pivoted to doing food prep and distribution. So we were preparing hot meals because it was a little problematic for me that some of the programs in the city started saying things like, okay, well, we're going to do a meal program for kids. Where, I mean, I grew up poor. And when you grow up in a household like that, you know that if any food comes in that house for anybody, that's food coming in that house for everybody. So you're not solving a problem by sending home something for one person, when there are 4 hungry people in the house. So we really pushed into this idea of making sure that we were providing enough food for everyone for multiple days. So with that collaboration, we were then able to distribute food boxes that had pre-prepared meals as well as dry goods and produce options for folks. And then even some folks who had dietary restrictions, we were able to get Kroger gift cards and put those in the boxes so that they could then go and purchase the additional things that they needed to be able to take care of themselves.
Wow. Wow. That is remarkable work. And you bring up such an excellent point about the reality of what's going on in our communities. There are entire families that have been blindsided. So being able to provide something that could help everybody is remarkable work. So thank you so much for sharing that. You mentioned about pivoting and how your staff had to very quickly pivot to now our focus is on feeding people. You and I have talked, we have a great relationship that goes way back, and you mentioned about some of your ideas for the future. I was personally inspired by the fact that you even, have inspiration for what's to come because times are so uncertain. Where does that come from as a leader? How do you still imagine, future projects and endeavors for you and your staff in the midst of all this uncertainty?
Well, part of it comes from that place of looking for the opportunity in a crisis. That if you're going to make sweeping change, the best time to do it is when change has been thrown at you. So now that we're in the business of pivoting, well, then let's just keep pushing that and reinventing ourselves and extending to be more equipped and more responsive to what it is that we see are the real issues and challenges. You know, I mean, we even did that, you know, as the uprisings were occurring across the country and here in Indianapolis, and you know, we saw the kind of brutal response from the authorities and how kids were being snatched off the streets. And so, you know, in the middle of the night, I talked to the cafe and the bodega manager, and we were like, okay, we'll create a safe haven. So the cafe literally became this staging area where if kids needed medical treatment, if they needed equipment or supplies or food or just a safe place to get to, if trying to get all the way home was too much, then, you know, there we were at 2 o'clock in the morning, making sure that the young people who were out in the streets doing the important work had a safe place, you know, to be. We're getting ready to break ground on a massive greenhouse project, about 20,000 square feet. You know, our urban farm has been in operation for 4 years. We do about 40 to 50,000 pounds a season on our farm. And what this greenhouse operation will do is we'll be able to produce that much every quarter. And then really being able to, you know, to lean back into this conversation around, if you want to talk about obesity and hypertension and diabetes and all of these things that are plaguing our community, well, then we have to talk about accessibility and affordability, right? Because people talk about food access, and that's really not enough. In the example that I use, I tell people all the time, I have access to the Bentley dealership. Like, I know exactly where it is. You know, I can't even afford a brochure from there. And that really is the same point with food, is what is the point of access if it's not affordable? And so what our goal is with our food work is to really create a model where the most financially practical thing you can do is buy the healthiest food available.
You know, I'm thinking about some of the big major themes that have come up so far in our conversation, food access and food justice, this modern civil rights era that we're in, and even buying with Black businesses. These have become hot button topics in the news, and sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing when it comes to the publicity that it garners. But one thing that I think the community is really committed to is seeing people follow through on these things. So we've had a lot of organizations recently speak out and say, we're committed to doing ABCD. We stand with you. We blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on some of this new attention that's coming to the movement, and how do leaders sustain these commitments that they're making after it's no longer trendy?
Right. Well, you know, one of the things that I talk pretty frequently with people about is that when we talk about everyday anti-racism, that you have to ask yourself, what does that work look like on a mundane, boring Thursday afternoon? Right. It's one thing when the cameras are there. It's one thing when stuff's on fire. It's one thing when we have the horrible video footage of a man's life being, you know, so casually taken. You know, but one of the things, like, for example, that I ask a lot of the young people that we work with, I'm like, what do you think Martin Luther King just did on a Tuesday? Right? Like when he's at home and he's just there being dad, and, you know, the kids are on his nerves and the grass isn't cut and Coretta's riding him about, you know, the things that are around the house that are supposed to be done. What does the work look like then? And that's what I have to keep reminding people of, saying, listen, not being racist is not the same thing as being anti-racist, right? Not being racist is a very passive thing. But to be explicitly anti-racist, that means that every day you have to wake up and ask yourself, what am I doing today to make the world better than when I found it when I woke up this morning? And if at the end of the day you don't have an answer for that, then you either have one or two choices. Either stop saying that you're committed to that work, or get up and finish the work that you needed to leave the world a better place than when you woke up. I mean, it's and saying, you know, these are not huge, giant tasks. You know, we sometimes see like the marches and we see these protests and we're like, well, that's what the work is. No, that's not the work. The work is about, okay, who's doing the individual conversations? Who's having those individual meetings? who's showing up and following up and saying, hey, you remember last month when you all said that you were going to do X, Y, and Z? Okay, well, it's been a month and I still don't see it. So either you need to show me where it is, own that you haven't done it and admit that you need help doing it, or own the fact that you really had no intention of doing it. You just said that to carry favor in the moment.
Mm.
And anybody can do those things in every aspect, in every walk of their life, whether it's just simply calling out family members for saying things that are inappropriate and saying, look, you know what, I can't change your mind, but I can change your behavior in my presence, because one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to change your behavior or my presence is no longer going to be a part of your existence. And drawing some hard lines and standing on that. You know, like I said, people have to understand that, you know, we're not talking about these big, giant, major terms. Very simple, actionable, everyday tasks are the things that are really going to move the needle.
Yeah. What are some leadership lessons that have personally helped you to survive and thrive during this time?
You know, I was a classroom teacher, you know, at the beginning of my career, and the superintendent who gave me my first job, in my first interview with him, actually started talking to me then about what it was going to look like when I was a principal in his school district.
Wow. And you were just coming in as a teacher.
Yeah, I was coming in as a teacher straight out of college and had never expressed an interest or a desire to be in leadership at all. I want to teach and coach speech and debate and leave me alone. That, you know, that was the end of it. But he kept talking to me about this until finally I said, you know, I was like, did I say or do something to give you the impression that that's what I wanted to do? And he laughed. He said, no. He said, not at all. He said, but he said, you need to understand that one of the most important things about leadership is that you don't hire people for who they are. You hire people for who they can become. And then your job as a leader is to coach, support, and mentor them into achieving that. And so in the midst of this crisis and having that, you know, ringing in the back of my head when it was time to pivot, and seeing all of the people that, you know, have come on board. You know, I've been at Flanner House 4.5 years. We had 17 people on staff when I got here. We're up to 62 now.
Wow.
And to see, you know, that dispositional mindset when I said, all right, it's go time, it's time to pivot. All of these folks who I've been mentoring and talking to and kind of pushing didn't miss a beat. I mean, there wasn't a hesitation, there wasn't a pushback, there wasn't any of those kinds of things. And, you know, that's a grateful lesson, you know, that I got 26 years ago, that I'm still using and carrying with me, and is actually helping to inform the work that I do today.
Yeah, that is incredible. That's incredible, and a great way to wrap up our conversation. So I want to say thank you again for your time and for your thoughts and all the incredible work that you're doing in the community. Is there anything that we should be looking forward to when it comes to Flanner House? I know you mentioned about the greenhouse, but anything else?
Well, I mean, I'll go ahead and share with you. So we have actually been working with a foundation from the East Coast who is actually funding us to take Cleo's mobile. So we will actually have 2 buses that will be a full functioning grocery store that we can take to any part of the city, set them up in an L formation, and literally folks can get dry goods, you can get produce from the farm, you can get frozen and refrigerated goods, everything. So if we can't move expeditiously enough to start building food outlets around the city, then we'll bring the outlets to where the people are, and develop a rotation. So we'll actually be able to get affordable, healthy food options to people in any corner of the city.
Wow, that is awesome. Definitely looking forward to that because it is much needed. But thank you again for your time, and thank you to each and every one of you for tuning into the Convo.
Thank you.